I was halfway through my morning run when my phone buzzed. It was a Tuesday morning, around 10 a.m., and I was running my usual route through the neighborhood. The weather was nice, and I was enjoying the exercise and the chance to clear my head before starting work. My wife Sarah and I have a simple understanding. We don't bother each other during our personal time unless it's important. She knows I need my morning runs, and I respect her evening yoga time. So when I felt my phone vibrate, I knew something was wrong. I pulled out my phone and saw her message. I was almost kidnapped. My heart stopped. I immediately called her, my hands shaking as I pressed her name on the screen. "Hello?" She answered after 2 rings. "Sarah? Are you okay? Where are you? What happened?" I asked, trying not to panic. "I'm safe. I'm still at Hanover's Market. I'm okay. But something really scary just happened," she said. I could hear the fear in her voice, even though she was trying to stay calm. "I'm coming right now," I said, already turning around to run back. "No, wait. Just listen first. I need to tell you while it's fresh in my mind. I'm safe. I'm inside the store with employees around me. Just listen." So I sat down on a nearby bench and listened as she told me what had happened. Sarah had left the house around 9:30 that morning to do our weekly grocery shopping. It's something she actually enjoys, unlike me. I just want to get in and out as fast as possible, but she likes to browse and take her time. She finds it relaxing, a chance to think about meal planning for the week ahead, and to discover new products or seasonal items. She went to Hanover's Market, the grocery store we've been going to for 3 years. It's in a small shopping center in our neighborhood. We know the cashiers, we're familiar with the layout, and we've always felt safe there. The store has a good selection without being overwhelming, and the prices are reasonable. It's become part of our weekly routine, a familiar and comfortable place. She parked her car in her usual area, not too close to the building but not far out either. She liked parking in the same general area because it made it easier to remember where the car was when she came out with a full cart. As she walked toward the entrance, she was thinking about what we needed for the week. We were planning to have friends over for dinner on Friday, so she was mentally going through the ingredients she'd need for that meal. As she was walking in, she noticed 2 men near the entrance. One was tall, probably in his late 40s, with graying dark hair. He wore jeans and a wrinkled shirt. The other was younger, maybe early 30s, heavier build, with a shaved head and a visible tattoo on his arm. At the time, she didn't think much of them. People gather near store entrances all the time, waiting for friends or family, finishing cigarettes before going in, or just taking a moment before shopping. She grabbed a shopping cart and started her usual route through the store. She always begins in the produce section, picking out fresh vegetables and fruits for the week. Then she moves systematically through the aisles, working from one end of the store to the other. It's a pattern she's developed over years of grocery shopping, efficient but unhurried. It wasn't very crowded that morning. There were some older people doing their shopping, a few parents with kids in tow, and the usual background music playing softly over the speakers. The fluorescent lights buzzed gently overhead. Everything seemed completely normal. Sarah was in her element, comparing prices on tomatoes and checking the ripeness of avocados. Sarah was in the cereal aisle when she first noticed something odd. The tall man from outside was at the end of the aisle, looking at cereal boxes. He seemed to be studying them intently, but something about his posture seemed off to her. He wasn't shopping the way normal people shop. His body was too still, too focused, and he seemed more aware of the space around him than of the products on the shelves. She didn't think much of it at first, and moved on to the next item on her list. 3 aisles later, in the canned goods section, she saw him again. This time she also noticed the other man, the younger one with the shaved head at the opposite end of the aisle. The 2 men looked at each other. It wasn't a casual glance. It was deliberate, purposeful. They walked toward the middle of the aisle, met, had a brief conversation in low voices that Sarah couldn't hear, and then split up again, moving in different directions. Sarah felt a little uncomfortable but told herself she was being paranoid. Maybe they were friends who ran into each other by chance. Maybe they were brothers doing shopping together but splitting up to save time. She tried to ignore the uneasy feeling in her stomach and continued shopping. But as she kept going, she kept seeing to them. Again and again, one or both of the men would appear near her. They never came too close or did anything obvious. They didn't stare at her or approach her. They seemed to be shopping, looking at products, moving through the store. But they were always there just at the edge of her vision, like shadows that followed her from aisle to aisle. In the pasta aisle, the older man, apparently comparing prices on different brands of spaghetti. In the dairy section, the younger man standing in front of the yogurt case for what seemed like an unusually long time. Near the bakery, both of them, meeting again briefly, exchanging a few words, then separating and moving off in different directions. Sarah isn't the type of person who sees danger everywhere. She's not someone who assumes the worst about people or walks through life suspicious of everyone around her. She's generally trusting and believes most people have good intentions. But she also pays attention to her surroundings, and her gut was telling her something was wrong. The pattern was too consistent. Normal shoppers don't move through a store in such a coordinated way. Normal shoppers don't make eye contact across aisles and meet up repeatedly for brief conversations. She decided to test her feeling. Instead of going to the frozen food section like she normally would next, she turned her cart around and went back to the produce section at the front of the store. She pretended to look at apples, picking them up and examining them, but really she was watching from the corner of her eye. Within a minute, the older man appeared near the oranges. He wasn't looking at her directly, but he was definitely aware of where she was. He picked up an orange, looked at it, put it down, picked up another one, but his attention wasn't on the fruit. His attention was on tracking her position in the store. Her heart started beating faster. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't paranoia or an overactive imagination. Something was very wrong. These men were following her, tracking her movements, coordinating with each other. But why? What did they want? Sarah made a decision. She would finish shopping as quickly as possible, stay where other people were, and keep her guard up. She wasn't going to run away screaming based on a feeling, but she was going to be very, very careful. She started moving more deliberately, making sure she was always in areas where other shoppers were present, avoiding the emptier sections of the store. She was in the snack aisle, reaching for a bag of pretzels, when the older man finally walked directly up to her. "Excuse me," he said with a slight stutter. His voice was soft, almost apologetic. I hope I'm not bothering you, but do you have a moment to talk about Jesus?" Sarah turned to face him fully. Under normal circumstances, this might have seemed annoying but harmless. Street preaching, religious solicitation, people sharing their faith testimonies, these are all common enough experiences. But given everything she'd been noticing for the past 20 minutes, this felt planned, rehearsed, like a script he'd used before. Still, Sarah and I are Christians. We go to church regularly, we read the Bible, we pray together, and we try to live by our faith. We believe in being open to talking about faith, in being willing to listen to others' spiritual journeys, and in not immediately shutting down religious conversations. So even though every nerve in Sarah's body was screaming that something was wrong, her first thought was to give him a chance. Maybe she was wrong. Maybe this was just a sincere man trying to share his faith, and she was being unfair by assuming the worst. "Sure," she said carefully, keeping her voice friendly but not too encouraging. She positioned herself so she could see the rest of the aisle and could move away easily if needed. She also made sure her shopping cart was positioned between them, creating a physical barrier. The man's whole body seemed to relax when she agreed to listen. He smiled, and some of the tension left his shoulders. He launched into what sounded like a prepared story, one he'd told many times before. He said he had died several years ago in a terrible car accident. He described it in some detail how his car had been hit by a truck, how he'd been thrown from the vehicle, how the paramedics had pronounced him dead at the scene. But then, he said, something miraculous happened. God brought him back. He had what he described as a near-death experience, seeing a bright light, feeling overwhelming peace, and standing in the presence of Jesus himself. "Jesus turned my whole life around," he said, his stutter getting less noticeable as he got more into his story. "Before the accident, I was completely lost. I was into drugs, alcohol, all kinds of bad stuff. I hurt people, I hurt myself. I was on a path to nowhere. But when I died and met Jesus, he showed me I had a purpose. He gave me a message to bring back. He sent me back to spread his word and help others find the salvation that I found." While he talked, Sarah noticed several things that didn't add up. First, his eyes kept looking to the side, down the aisle, like he was watching for something or checking on someone. Second, despite the relaxed tone of his voice and the emotional nature of his story, his body was tense, coiled, ready to move quickly. His weight was balanced on the balls of his feet like an athlete ready to spring into action. Third, and most worrying, she could see the younger man slowly making his way down the aisle behind her. Sarah had deliberately kept her back to the shelves, not to the open aisle, specifically so no one could approach her from behind without her seeing them in her peripheral vision. But the younger man was trying to get behind her anyway, moving slowly and casually, pretending to look at products on the shelves but steadily working his way into her blind spot. The older man kept talking, his story getting more elaborate. He talked about how Jesus had given him specific instructions, about how he felt called to approach strangers in stores and parking lots and other public places to share his testimony. He said he knew it might seem strange or uncomfortable, but he had to be obedient to what God had called him to do. The thing is, he said, leaning slightly closer, you never know when you're entertaining angels. The Bible says we might entertain angels without knowing it. So when I approach someone like you, someone who seems kind and open, I wonder if maybe God sent you to me, or me to you, for a reason. Sarah's mind was racing. Every instinct told her to get away immediately. The younger man was now only about 8 or 9 feet behind her. But she also knew that if she showed fear or suspicion openly, if she made a scene or ran away, things might get worse. She needed to stay calm, stay aware, and be ready to act if necessary. So she smiled politely and said, "That's a powerful story. I'm actually a Christian myself, so I appreciate you sharing. I go to church regularly and have my own relationship with Jesus." "Oh, that's wonderful," the older man said, his stutter returning slightly. "Then you understand the power of faith, the importance of being open to God's messengers, the way he works in mysterious ways." The younger man was getting even closer now. He was now only about 6 feet behind her and to her left. His right hand was in his jacket pocket, and there was something about the way he held his arm, the way he moved, that set off every alarm bell in Sarah's head. He wasn't walking like someone shopping. He was moving with purpose, with focus, like someone about to do something specific. The older man was still talking something about fellowship and the body of Christ and being open to divine encounters, but Sarah wasn't really listening anymore. All her attention was on the younger man approaching from behind, on calculating distances and angles, on being ready to move. What happened next took only seconds, but Sarah said it felt both very fast and strangely slow, like time had shifted into a different gear. The younger man's hand came out of his pocket in a quick, practiced motion, and he moved toward her with sudden speed. His arm was extending, reaching toward her face. But Sarah had played competitive soccer in high school and college. She'd been a midfielder, which required constant awareness of players approaching from all angles, quick reaction times, and the ability to change direction instantly. Those years of training had become instinct, wired into her muscle memory. Before her conscious mind even fully understood what was happening, her body reacted. She turned hard to her right, pivoting on her left foot, and simultaneously pushed her shopping cart directly at the older man to create a barrier and to give herself momentum. The movement was smooth and fast, practiced from years of athletic training. The younger man's speed carried him forward. He'd been moving in to spray something directly at her face, but suddenly she wasn't where she was supposed to be. His shoulder clipped Sarah's arm as she moved a glancing contact that threw him slightly off balance. He stumbled, his feet tangling for a moment as he tried to adjust to her unexpected movement. "Hey!" Sarah shouted, loud enough for everyone in that section of the store to hear. Her voice was sharp, commanding, projecting the way coaches had taught her to communicate on the soccer field. Several other shoppers turned to look. An older couple at the end of the aisle stopped and stared. A young mother with a toddler in her cart looked over with concern. The younger man caught himself, regaining his balance. He backed up a step, his face flushed, his eyes wide. Sorry, didn't see you there," he muttered. But his voice was shaky and his words didn't match. The panic in his eyes. He wasn't apologizing for bumping into her, he was apologizing for getting caught. That's when Sarah saw it clearly. In his hand was a small spray bottle, the kind you might buy at a dollar store or get as a sample container. It was made of clear plastic, maybe 3 or 4 inches tall, with a simple pump spray mechanism on top. Inside was a liquid that looked immediately wrong to Sarah's eyes. The liquid was cloudy white, with a milky appearance that reminded her of diluted milk or a very light cream. But it was thin, not thick like actual milk. When the man's hand shook, the liquid sloshed around in the bottle quickly, moving like water, not like anything viscous or syrupy. The color was uniform throughout, not separated or layered like some liquids get when they sit. Sarah stared at the bottle, her mind trying to process what she was seeing, what it might be, what it was intended for. Then she looked at the man's face. He was staring at the bottle in his own hand like he was surprised to see it there, like he hadn't meant for it to be visible, like he just made a terrible mistake. His face had gone pale except for 2 red spots high on his cheeks. Sweat was beading on his forehead and upper lip. His hand was trembling noticeably. The younger man looked away from the bottle and directly at the older man. Something passed between them in that look, some communication that needed no words. It was recognition, understanding, and shared panic. Their plan, whatever it had been, had failed. They'd been seen. The element of surprise was gone. Other people were looking now, witnesses who would remember their faces. "I have to go," the younger man said suddenly, his voice tight. He turned and walked quickly toward the front of the store, not quite running but moving with clear urgency. His gait was stiff and his shoulders were hunched, like someone expecting to be grabbed from behind at any moment. The older man looked at Sarah one more time. Their eyes met, and for just a moment she saw something in his expression that chilled her more than anything else that had happened. It wasn't anger or aggression, it was calculation. Even in this moment of failure, even as his plan fell apart, he was assessing, measuring, filing away information for later. "God bless you," he said, his voice flat despite the religious words. Then he turned and followed the other man toward the exit, his movements controlled and deliberate, not hurried like his companion. Sarah stood there for a moment, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat, her hands shaking as adrenaline flooded her system. The shopping cart was askew in the aisle where she'd pushed it. Other shoppers were looking at her with expressions ranging from concern to curiosity to confusion. "Are you okay, dear?" an older woman asked, approaching slowly with her own shopping cart. She was probably in her 70s, with carefully styled white hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "That young man nearly knocked you over. Some people are so rude these days, not watching where they're going." I'm fine," Sarah managed, though her voice didn't sound fine even to her own ears. "Thank you. I'm fine." But she wasn't fine. Her legs felt weak and shaky. Her mind was starting to process what had just happened, and as the pieces fell into place, the full horror of what she'd barely avoided began to sink in like ice water through her veins. Those men hadn't just been following her out of random creepiness. They had been working together, using a practiced technique with a specific goal in mind. And that bottle, that small spray bottle with its strange milky liquid, had been meant for her face, her nose and mouth, meant to be sprayed directly at her before she could react or call for help. Sarah didn't finish shopping. The thought of continuing to walk through the aisles, picking out groceries like nothing had happened, was impossible. She left her cart right there in the snack aisle, abandoning the items she'd already collected, and walked quickly toward the front of the store. Her legs felt disconnected from her body, operating on autopilot while her mind tried to catch up with what had just occurred. The two men were already gone. As she approached the front of the store, she could see through the large windows that faced the parking lot. Two figures were moving quickly across the pavement, heading toward the far corner of the lot where several cars were parked. They weren't running, but they were moving with purpose, with speed, putting distance between themselves and the store. Sarah went directly to the customer service desk, where a teenage girl was organizing lottery tickets behind the counter. The girl had blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail and wore the store's uniform vest over a black t-shirt. She looked up with a practiced customer service smile that faded when she saw Sarah's face. "I need to speak to the manager right now," Sarah said, trying to keep her voice steady but hearing the tremor in it anyway. "It's urgent, and I need someone to walk me to my car when I leave." The girl's eyes widened. She couldn't have been more than 17 or 18, probably working a part-time job while in high school or college. She wasn't trained for this kind of situation. "Is everything okay?" she asked, her voice rising slightly. "Did something happen? Do you need me to call 911? "Please just get the manager," Sarah said. "And yes, please call 911. I need to report an attempted assault." The girl's mouth formed a small O of shock, and she immediately picked up the phone, pressing buttons with slightly fumbling fingers. "Patricia, can you come to customer service right away? It's an emergency." She hung up and looked at Sarah. "She'll be right here. Do you want to sit down? Can I get you some water?" "Water would be good, thank you," Sarah said. Her mouth felt dry, her throat tight. Within minutes, a woman in her 50s emerged from the back offices. She had short gray hair, glasses on a chain around her neck, and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd managed a grocery store for many years. Her name tag read Patricia Morrison, store manager. "I'm Patricia." "What's happened?" she asked, her voice calm but concerned. She took in Sarah's pale face and shaking hands with a quick, assessing glance. "Two men in your store just tried to attack me," Sarah said. "They were following me for at least 20 minutes, working together, and one of them tried to spray something in my face. I need you to call the police and I need to see your security footage." Patricia's expression shifted from concern to alarm. "Of course. Come with me to my office right now." "Jamie," she said to the teenage girl, "call 911 and tell them we have an attempted assault to report. Tell them the suspects left the building but may still be in the area." In Patricia's office, which was small and cluttered with paperwork, scheduling sheets, and store inventory reports, Sarah sat in a worn chair and tried to calm her breathing. Patricia pulled up security camera feeds on her computer, multiple screens showing different angles of the store. "Can you tell me when this happened and where?" Patricia asked, her fingers poised over the keyboard. Sarah walked her through it, describing the timing and locations. Patricia typed rapidly, pulling up footage from different cameras, rewinding to show the two men's movements through the store. And there it was, all captured on grainy digital video. The two men entering shortly after Sarah, the pattern of them appearing in aisles where she was shopping, the meetings where they briefly conferred, and finally the incident in the snack aisle. "Oh my God," Patricia breathed as she watched the footage. This is clearly coordinated. This is obviously intentional. They're hunting." "You?" Sarah felt sick hearing it stated so baldly. Hunting. That's exactly what it had been. It was while sitting in that office, watching herself on the security monitors, seeing the attack happen from a different angle, that Sarah pulled out her phone and texted me. Her hands were still shaking as she typed those 4 words. "I was almost kidnapped." I don't remember much about the run back to the shopping center. I know I ran faster than I ever had before, faster than any training run or race. I know I didn't stop at crosswalks, just looked quickly for cars and kept going. I know people on the sidewalk turned to stare at the man sprinting past them with a look of terror on his face. When I reached the parking lot, I ran straight into the store, past the checkout lanes and the customers doing their normal shopping, completely oblivious to what had just happened in their store. A manager I didn't recognize tried to stop me, probably thinking I was a shoplifter or someone, causing trouble. But I said, "My wife," and kept going toward the customer service desk, where another employee pointed me to the offices in back. I burst through the door of the manager's office, and Sarah stood up from her chair and came into my arms. She wasn't crying, but I could feel her whole body shaking, the tremors running through her like small earthquakes. I held her as tight as I could, one hand on the back of her head, the other around her shoulders, as if I could physically shield her from what had already happened. "I'm okay," she whispered against my chest, and I felt the warmth of her breath through my shirt. "I'm okay. I'm safe." I just held her, unable to speak past the lump in my throat, while over her shoulder I could see Patricia and a police officer who must have just arrived watching us with understanding expressions. The police officer, a young man, probably in his late 20s with a military-style haircut and a serious expression, introduced himself as Officer Daniels. He was professional and thorough, asking Sarah to recount everything that had happened while he took detailed notes. Sarah went through the story again, and I listened, still holding her hand, feeling my anger grow with each detail. When she got to the part about the spray bottle and its contents, Officer Daniels stopped writing and looked up. "Can you describe the liquid again?" he asked. Sarah did, explaining about the cloudy white color and thin consistency. Officer Daniels exchanged a look with Patricia that I couldn't quite read, but it seemed significant. "We're going to need copies of all your security footage," Officer Daniels said to Patricia. "And I'm calling for a detective to be assigned to this case immediately. This isn't just a simple harassment complaint. Based on what you're describing, this was an organized attempt at abduction, possibly connected to human trafficking operations." The words human trafficking hit me like a physical blow. My wife, my Sarah, had nearly become a victim of human trafficking. In our neighborhood. In the grocery store we'd been shopping at for years. On an ordinary Tuesday morning, over the following days and weeks, the investigation expanded beyond what we'd initially expected. Detective Marcus Richardson from the County Sheriff's Department was assigned as the lead investigator. He came to our house the evening of the incident, after Sarah had given her official statement at the police station. Detective Richardson was in his early 50s, with gray hair at his temples and the weathered look of someone who'd seen too much of humanity's dark side. But his eyes were kind, and his manner was patient and respectful as he interviewed Sarah again, this time in the comfort of our own living room. "I've been a detective for 23 years, he told us as he sat in our armchair with his notepad. "And cases like this are becoming more common. Not because the crimes are new, but because we're getting better at recognizing the patterns." He explained that, based on Sarah's description and the security footage, this appeared to be a textbook attempted kidnapping, using techniques commonly associated with organized trafficking operations. The pattern of behavior you described, the two men working in tandem, maintaining visual contact with you throughout the store, positioning themselves strategically, that's not random behavior, he said. That's hunting behavior. That's a practice technique. The word hunting made Sarah flinch. I reached over and took her hand. The spray bottle is particularly concerning, Detective Richardson continued. Unfortunately, the suspects left the store before patrol officers could apprehend them, and we haven't been able to identify them yet from the footage, though we're running it through facial recognition databases and sending it to other jurisdictions. Without the actual substance they were carrying, we can only theorize about what it might have contained. But based on the description and the context, there are several possibilities. Detective Richardson opened a folder he'd brought with him and pulled out several printed pages. I want to walk you through some possibilities, he said. Not to scare you further, but because understanding what you might have been dealing with can help with the investigation and with your own processing of what happened. Chloroform or similar agents. This is probably what most people think of first because it's shown in movies and TV shows, he began. Chloroform is a chemical that can cause unconsciousness when inhaled in sufficient quantities. However, I need to be clear that Hollywood has greatly exaggerated how quickly and easily it works. He explained that in reality, it would take several minutes of continuously holding a chloroform-soaked cloth over someone's face to actually render them unconscious. In a public place like a grocery store, with other people around, trying to completely incapacitate someone with chloroform would be incredibly risky for the attackers, he said. The victim would have time to struggle, to scream, to fight back, and others would notice. However, he noted that even if it didn't cause complete unconsciousness, being sprayed with chloroform could cause immediate disorientation, dizziness, confusion, and impaired judgment. It could make someone compliant enough to be led away without making a scene, he said. You might be too disoriented to call for help or to resist effectively. That's probably what they were counting on, a few seconds of confusion, during which they could get you outside to a vehicle. GHB, gamma-hydroxybutyric acid. Detective Richardson explained that GHB is often called a date rape drug and is typically administered orally in drinks. But, he said, liquid preparations of GHB can be absorbed through mucous membranes or inhaled as an aerosol. He described how GHB in its pure form is odorless and colorless, but liquid preparations can have a slightly milky or cloudy appearance. If sprayed directly on someone's face, particularly targeting the nose and mouth, it could be absorbed through the mucous membranes, he explained. It causes rapid sedation, muscle relaxation, and often short-term amnesia. Victims frequently can't remember what happened to them during the time they were under its influence. Sarah's hand tightened on mine as she listened. The thought of what might have happened if that spray had hit her face, if she'd breathed it in, made both of us feel physically ill. Etorphine or carfentanil? These were substances I'd never heard of before, but Detective Richardson explained they were extremely potent drugs in the opioid family, thousands of times more powerful than morphine. These are typically used in veterinary medicine, he said, to sedate or tranquilize large animals like elephants, bears, or rhinoceroses. The reason these substances are so dangerous for use against humans is precisely because they're so incredibly powerful, he continued. A tiny amount, even absorbed through the skin or inhaled as a mist, can cause almost immediate unconsciousness. They're also potentially lethal because they can cause respiratory depression, meaning they make you stop breathing. Many accidental human exposures to these chemicals have resulted in death. He paused, then added, the milky white appearance your wife described could be consistent with a suspended or emulsified form of one of these substances. In their pure chemical form, they're typically colorless. But to prepare them for aerosol delivery, they might be mixed with other substances, emulsifiers, or carriers that would give the mixture a cloudy or milky appearance. Benzodiazepines. Detective Richardson mentioned that these are another class of sedative medications, including drugs with names I recognize like Valium and Rohypnol. These can be prepared in liquid forms, he said, and when sprayed on someone's face and either inhaled or absorbed through mucous membranes, they can cause sedation, confusion, and seriously impaired judgment. Combination preparations. Finally, he mentioned that organized criminal operations sometimes use carefully prepared combinations of multiple substances. A mixture might include a fast-acting sedative combined with something that impairs memory, he explained, making it harder for victims to recall what happened to them or to provide useful information to police later. The more sophisticated the operation, the more likely they are to use customized chemical cocktails designed for specific effects. He closed his folder and looked at both of us seriously. The bottom line is this: whatever was in that bottle, it wasn't something benign. It was intended to incapacitate you, Mrs. Sarah, quickly and effectively, so you could be removed from the store with minimal resistance or notice. You were seconds away from that happening. Your quick reaction and athletic training quite literally saved you. As the investigation continued, Detective Richardson revealed that Sarah's encounter wasn't an isolated event. It was part of a larger pattern of similar incidents happening across several states. A task force had been tracking a group of men who used distractions like fake religious talks or asking for help to get close to women in public places, such as grocery stores or parking lots. He showed us footage from other cases and a map dotted with reports. Most women had escaped, but two, one from Ohio and one from Indiana, had vanished completely. Richardson explained that the goal appeared to be human trafficking, one of the world's largest and most brutal criminal industries. He told us that Sarah's quick instincts likely saved her life. In the days after the incident, Sarah struggled deeply. She couldn't sleep, woke up from nightmares, and felt jumpy all the time. Even simple tasks, like going to the store, filled her with fear. She started shaking in grocery aisles, scanning everyone around her, unable to relax. One evening, she told me she felt stupid for being so scared since she hadn't been physically hurt. I reminded her she wasn't stupid, she was traumatized. What she felt was normal after what happened. When she asked if she'd ever feel safe again, I told her honestly that I didn't know, but we'd find help and face it together. We found a therapist named Dr. Jennifer Santos, who specialized in trauma and post-traumatic stress. Dr. Santos was in her 40s, with warm brown eyes and a gentle manner that immediately put Sarah at ease. Her office was comfortable and calming, with soft lighting and comfortable chairs. In their first session, Dr. Santos listened to Sarah's account of what had happened and then explained what Sarah was experiencing. "What you're describing are very normal responses to a traumatic event," she said. "Your brain experienced a serious threat to your safety and survival. Now it's in a state of hypervigilance, trying to protect you by staying constantly alert for similar threats. The problem is that this state of high alert is exhausting and can interfere with your daily life." In the months after the attack, Sarah worked closely with Dr. Santos to manage her anxiety. They practiced grounding and breathing exercises to help her stay calm and used EMDR therapy to ease the emotional weight of her trauma. Slowly, Sarah began to heal. Her nightmares faded, her fear lessened, and she started to tell the difference between real danger and old memories trying to scare her again. She also joined a women's self-defense class led by Maria, a black belt who taught that safety begins with awareness and trusting your instincts. The classes helped Sarah feel strong again. They gave her confidence and a sense of control she thought she'd lost. Months later, Sarah told me, "I won't let fear run my life. What happened was real and terrifying, but it doesn't define me." The men who attacked her were never caught, though the investigation continues. Detective Richardson believes they'll make a mistake someday. Since then, our lives have changed. We're more alert, more cautious, but also stronger. The community has learned from what happened: stores, added cameras, and local groups started safety workshops. If you take one thing from this, let it be this: trust your instincts. Notice what feels off. Speak up if something seems wrong. Sarah's quick thinking saved her life, and it might save someone else's too. Every safe, ordinary day is something to be thankful for.